The rain came down in sheets across the alien forest, turning the purple soil into thick mud that clung to Dr. Sarah Chen's boots. She was supposed to be collecting plant samples, not wandering 3 kilometers from base camp, but the strange crying sound had drawn her deeper into the woods. It wasn't like anything she'd heard before on this planet. High-pitched, desperate, and somehow familiar, in a way that made her chest ache. Sarah pushed through another curtain of drooping vines, their bioluminescent spots flickering weakly in the storm. The crying grew louder. She rounded a massive tree trunk and froze. Huddled against the exposed roots was a creature no bigger than a house cat. Its fur was matted and dark with rain, but she could make out the distinctive ridge patterns of a krell juvenile, a predator species. The apex predator of this entire sector of space, according to the briefings. The species that had nearly wiped out 2 colonies before the treaty. The cub's eyes, too large for its small face, locked onto her. It didn't run. It just stared, shivering violently, making that pitiful sound that had pulled her from safety. Every instinct Sarah had learned in xenobiology training screamed at her to back away slowly. The parents were certainly nearby. Krell were notoriously protective. If they found a human near their young, the fragile peace between their species would shatter, and she would be the match that lit that fire. But the cub was so small, so cold. Its breathing came in rapid, shallow gasps that she recognized as the early stages of hypothermia, even in an alien species. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in the last hour. This little one wouldn't survive the night out here. Sarah made a decision that would either save a life or end her own. She shrugged out of her weather jacket, feeling the immediate bite of cold rain against her shirt. Slowly, speaking in soft, meaningless sounds, she approached the cub. It tensed but didn't flee. Maybe it was too weak. Maybe it sensed she meant no harm. She wrapped the jacket around the small body, feeling it flinch at the contact before melting into the warmth. The cub's shivering began to ease. Up close, Sarah could see the delicate pattern of scales mixed with fur along its spine, the tiny claws that would one day tear through ship hulls, the teeth that were already sharp despite the creature's youth. "It's okay," she whispered, knowing it couldn't understand her words, but hoping her tone carried meaning. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Carrying the bundled cub against her chest, Sarah began the trek back to camp. The creature stayed remarkably still, occasionally making small chirping sounds that vibrated against her ribs. She had to radio ahead, had to warn the others, but her communicator had died an hour ago. Another stupid mistake in a day full of them. The forest seemed to watch her as she walked. Twice she felt certain she saw movement in the canopy above, large shapes keeping pace with her. Her heart hammered, but she kept moving. If the Krell parents were tracking her, stopping would only give them time to decide she was a threat. By the time Sarah stumbled into the clearing where base camp sat, her teeth were chattering uncontrollably. Her shirt clung to her skin, and her fingers had gone numb, but the cub in her arms was warm, its breathing steady and strong. The camp erupted into chaos. Dr. Williams spotted her first and immediately hit the alarm. Within seconds, armed security personnel poured from the prefab buildings, weapons trained on the bundle she carried. "Stand down!" Sarah shouted, her voice hoarse. "It's injured, just a juvenile." "Chen, step away from that thing right now." Commander Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. "That's an order." "No." Sarah held the cub tighter. It made a questioning sound, sensing the tension. "It's a baby. It was dying out there. I'm not going to let you kill it because you're afraid." The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Then Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's cultural liaison, pushed through the ring of soldiers. She held up her hands in a placating gesture. "Everyone, lower your weapons, now!" Her voice carried an authority that even Morrison respected. If the Krell find out we harmed one of their young, they'll glass this planet from orbit. Our only chance is to show we protected it." The logic penetrated the fear. Slowly, reluctantly, the weapons lowered. Sarah carried the cub into the medical bay, Yuki following close behind. They set up a makeshift enclosure using equipment crates and heating elements. When Sarah finally unwrapped her jacket, the cub stretched, revealing its full length. About 60 centimeters, with oversized paws that promised impressive size at maturity. "It's malnourished," Yuki observed, running a scanner over the creature. "Probably separated from its family for days, not hours." "You saved its life, Sarah." The cub explored its temporary home, sniffing everything with obvious curiosity. When it returned to Sarah, it did something unexpected. It rubbed its head against her hand, the same gesture she'd seen in the few videos of adult Krell. A scent-marking behavior. The cub was claiming her as safe, as pack. "This is either the best thing you've ever done or the worst," Yuki said quietly. "There's no way to know until they come for it." They didn't have to wait long. The Krell arrived at dawn. 3 of them, each standing over 2 meters tall even in their natural quadruped stance. Their scales gleamed like oil in the early light, and their eyes burned with an intelligence that was utterly alien and completely unmistakable. These were not animals. They were people. Morrison met them at the perimeter with Yuki translating through the computer interface. Sarah watched from the medical bay window, her hand resting on the cub's head as it slept in her rewrapped jacket. The negotiation was brief. The Krell wanted their young. Morrison wanted assurances of no retaliation. It was Yuki who suggested they allow the mother to retrieve the cub directly from Sarah. A show of trust on both sides. Sarah's hands shook as she carried the sleeping cub across the compound. The 3 adult Krell watched her approach, their bodies coiled with restrained power. Any one of them could kill her in seconds. All 3 together could slaughter the entire camp. The largest Krell, presumably the mother, lowered her massive head as Sarah approached. The cub woke, chirped excitedly, and scrambled from the jacket into its mother's reaching claws. The reunion was brief but tender. The mother curled around her young, checking it over with the universal concern of a parent. Then she turned her attention to Sarah. The woman forced herself to stand still as the Krell leaned forward, her breath hot and smelling of things Sarah couldn't identify. The creature's nostril slits flared as she scented Sarah thoroughly. The cub's smell was all over her, mixed with her own. The Krell made a sound, deep and resonant. The translation came through Yuki's speakers a moment later. "She carries our scent. She sheltered our blood when death hunted. This human is marked. Any who harm her harm the Apex clan." The 3 Krell departed as silently as they'd arrived, the cub looking back once from its mother's back, chirping a goodbye that needed no translation. In the weeks that followed, Sarah learned what the Krell's declaration meant. When a survey team encountered a hostile predator in the southern continent, a Krell hunting pack appeared from nowhere and drove it off. When Sarah's shuttle experienced engine failure over the ocean, a Krell transport vessel appeared within minutes to provide escort. The protection wasn't limited to her. It extended to any human she was with, any group she traveled alongside. The political ramifications echoed across the sector. A human had been declared untouchable by the Apex clan, one of the most powerful Krell family groups. Trade negotiations that had stalled for months suddenly moved forward. Colonial disputes found peaceful resolutions, all because Sarah had seen a cold, frightened child and chosen compassion over caution. 6 months later, Sarah was preparing to leave the planet for a new assignment when a shuttle arrived unannounced. The cub, now significantly larger and showing the proud bearing of a young Krell, bounded down the ramp. Behind it came the mother, moving with the deadly grace of a creature born to hunt. Through Yuki's translation, the mother spoke. My young one wished to see the human who gave warmth when the world was cold. We bring gifts of gratitude and alliance. The gifts were traditional Krell items, woven metal threads that could cut through anything, crystals that held captured starlight. But the greatest gift was the cub itself, pressing its head against Sarah's chest just as it had that first night, reaffirming that bond. You taught my child that strength comes in many forms, the mother continued. That kindness is not weakness. This is a lesson the Krell have forgotten too long. You honor us with your presence, warmth giver. As Sarah scratched behind the cub's auditory ridges, listening to it purr like distant thunder, she understood something profound. The galaxy was full of predators and prey, hunters and hunted. But sometimes, just sometimes, there was room for something else. Something that transcended species and instinct, trust, compassion. The simple choice to see a child in need rather than a political complication. Her jacket, still bearing the scent of that rainy night, hung in her quarters. She'd never wash it. It was more than clothing now. It was a symbol of the moment humanity and the Krell stopped seeing monsters in each other and started seeing people. And it all began because one human woman couldn't walk past a crying child, no matter how many teeth it had.